fun.
Good evening and welcome back to MTRA Bedtime Stories. Yesterday, Alec had to chase the black down. He was on the loose. They found him near the golf course and they were able to get him home safe and sound. So today, we start on chapter 11 and the title is called Partners. And our special guest is Casino. And he's going to join us tonight. And he's going to enjoy that big bunch of hay. Come here, buddy. There we go. Okay, here we go. Is everybody ready? The rest of the day passed quickly for Alec. After breakfast, while his mother was in the living room, he slipped upstairs and put on dry shoes and socks. When he came down, he chatted with his mother, sharing little incidents of experiences on the island and telling her about Uncle Ralph and the fun they had had together in India. In the afternoon, he groomed the black until the stallion's body glistened and his long mane fell smoothly down on his neck. Henry came into the stable. Then cleaning the attic, he grunted. I carried a large package wrapped in newspapers under his arm. He placed the bundle down on the floor. Come here and look what I found, he said to Alec. He began unwrapping the package as Alec knelt beside him. The papers, brown with age, cracked and fell apart as he took them off. Inside was a small racing saddle and bridle. Henry gently lifted them out and looked at them. He didn't say anything. A minute passed and then he reached down into the bundle again. Almost caressingly, he drew out a blazing green jockey cap and shirt. Alec looked down into the bundle and saw a faded pair of riding jeans and black boots. Henry spoke softly. Everything's here, even my number. He held the shirt in his hand. Around the sleeve still hung the white number 3. Seems like only yesterday I wore him in the last race I ever rode. Henry stopped. Alec didn't speak. He couldn't tell from Henry's face that once again he was living that race over. He went to the post. The little man said, as if to himself, it was the largest crowd ever to see the International Cup. They were all for Chang, too. He was the greatest racehorse of the day. How they roared when we lined up. The other horses wouldn't stand still, but nothing ever bothered Chang. He let the others do the frisking. He just waited quietly for the barrier to go up. I never saw the rest of them in the race. Chang leaped ahead at the start and I gave him his head and he won going away. Henry swept a hand across his eyes. It wasn't until he had come to a stop that he suddenly trembled, staggered, vainly attempted to keep his feet, then fell to the ground dead. The doctors never knew what actually killed him. Finally said that it was a blood clot or something like that. I never knew what to believe. The only thing that mattered was that Chang was gone, but the record he set that day still stands. Henry stopped and his gaze turned to the black. I never thought I would see a horse that could break the record until now, he said. The black's long neck stretched far over his stall door. He shook his head and whinnied. Carefully, Henry put the shirt back into the bundle and rose to his feet. He carried it over to the corner of the barn and placed it inside the trunk. He then turned around to face the boy. There's just one thing that stands in our way of putting Black in a race, Alec. You mean because he's so wild, Henry? No, I don't mean that. By spring, we should have him calm down a bit. But I read in the paper just now of how you got the black. You didn't tell me this morning. I was going to, Henry, but why does that stand in his way? Only that you don't have any record of who his sire and dam were. And Alec, a horse must be registered to run in a race. Alec felt a sick feeling in his stomach. He hadn't realized how much he had looked forward to seeing the black race. You mean, Henry, we have to find out before we can put the black on a track? Afraid so, kid, Henry answered. Alec could see that he was disappointed as himself. Isn't there any way possibly that you could get information, the little man said. I don't see how, Henry. I know the name of the port in Arabia where he got on, but that's all I know. Everybody on the ship was drowned, so there aren't any records we could possibly get. Henry thought a minute, then he he said, I'll drop a line to a friend of mine in the jockey club. Maybe he can help us some way. Gee, Henry, I hope so. We have all winter to try and find out, Henry said. Maybe they can trace him from the town or something. He looks like too valuable a horse not to be registered in a stud book somewhere. He walked toward the door. Have to be getting back now or the missus will be coming down for me. He stopped and put a hand on his pocket. He took out a piece of paper, wrote down what he needed for the black to eat. Alec, he said, after you get finished, you can go down to the feed store and get him. We can't have that big boy eating all of Napoleon's grain, you know. He paused and his hand went once again inside his pocket. Seeing that we're going to work together, it's only fair that I share some of the expenses, Alec, so I want to pay for this. You don't have to do that, Henry. Dad's going to give me a regular allowance for the work I do around the house. Henry smiled. Sure. He came back, and we're going to need all the money we can get. It takes money to make a champion, you know. And we can't skimp on the black's food. That's why we're going to have to work together, just like partners. Come on now, take this money and beat it down to the store. Henry shoved the money into the boy's hand. Alec looked from the old jockey to the stallion. Okay, partner, he said, smiling. The next morning, Alec went back to school. Whiff Sample and Bill Lee fell in beside him as he left the building at 12:30. What's all this about you being in a shipwreck and everything? Whiff asked excitedly. Yeah, it was in the paper yesterday morning and you even came home with a horse, Bill finished. It's the truth, Alec answered. And if you don't believe me, come on along and I'll show them to you. I'm going over to the stable now. We sure will, they answered together. When they reached the barn, Alec saw Henry. Hello, he yelled. So you brought along some spectators, eh, Alec? Whiff's and Bill's eyes were turned toward the field where the black grazed in a corner. Gosh, they said. The black raised his head when he heard Alec's voice. His ears pricked forward and he whistled. Alec whistled back. Suddenly, the horse broke toward them. Whiff and Bill hung back with Henry as Alec walked toward the fence. The black hesitated when he saw the newcomers. He screamed and trotted back down the field. Henry didn't have to urge Whiff and Bill to move out of sight. They ran into the barn, their eyes wide with excitement. Did you see him? Gasped Bill. Boy, he's the biggest horse I ever did see, and what a mean look, answered Whiff. They watched from the window of the barn. The black broke into a long lope and ran toward Alec. As he walked into the field, better get back, Alec, yelled Henry. If he doesn't slow up, he'll hit you. The stallion thundered down upon the boy. 5 yards away, he swerved, barely missing him. He ran to the fence, turned, and once again ran toward him. He swerved as he had done before. Better get out of there, Alec, Henry warned. He just wants to play, Henry, Alec yelled over his shoulder. We did this all the time on the island. It's like a game of tag. Yeah, Henry called. Some fun. He watched as Alec ran after the black until he got him into a corner. The stallion reared and pawed the ground. He ran to one side, then to the other. Alec slowly approached him, both hands spread apart. The black snorted, his long mane falling over his eyes. Suddenly, Alec ran toward him. The stallion whirled and broke for the side. Alex reached out and slapped him on the hindquarters. The black ran to the center of the field, then turned and looked back, shaking his head. Oh, what a pair, Henry said to himself. The stallion charged back at the boy, again swerving when he was almost on top of him. For 10 minutes, Henry watched the strangest game he had ever witnessed. And slowly, he began to understand the strange understanding that had grown between the wild stallion and the boy. A few minutes later, Alec came up to him. His shirt was wet with sweat and his blue eyes glistened with excitement. Did you see Henry? He exclaimed. He just wanted to play. Look at him, Henry. Did you ever see anything so great in all your life? The black had broken into a gallop and was running around the field. His mane flew back in the wind, and as he neared them, his powerful stride shook the ground. He swept past. Henry didn't say anything until the stallion had come to a stop at the other end of the field. Whirled and looked back at them. Henry's own eyes were bright too. No, he said, I've never seen anything like him. Not even Chang. I wrote to my friend in the jockey club, he continued after a moment's silence. I explained the situation. and asked if there wasn't some way he could check up on the black's pedigree. He should be registered somewhere. How long before he'll answer you, Henry? Should be sometime this week, telling us what to do anyway. I hope so, Alex said. It can't be too soon for me. Me either. Guess we better bring him in now. He's been out long enough. Then we'll make the fence a little higher in spots so we won't be chasing him through the park like we did yesterday. The boy whistled and the black came running toward him. Alec grabbed him by the halter and rubbed his nose. He was leading him toward the barn when he heard someone shout, "Hey, Alec, keep away. Don't bring him in here. We're here," the stallion snorted. "What do you know, Henry? I forgot all about Whiff and Bill," Alec said. "They're still in the barn. Come on out, fellas. I'll hold the black here." The two boys came out a little sheepishly. "Guess we'd better get home to lunch," Whiff said. They hurried down the driveway as the stallion screamed softly. "Guess they believe me now," Alex said, grinning. After dinner that same night, Alec went back to the barn. Tony had already stabled old Napoleon for the night. Alex saw him shove his white nose over into the black stall to steal some of his oats. The black playfully nipped him, and Napoleon quickly withdrew his head. Alec couldn't get over the fancy the black had taken to Napoleon. He wasn't afraid to leave him alone now, for as long as the old gray horse was around, the stallion was quiet. A little later, Alec bedded the black stall, turned out the lights, and went home. Days passed into weeks, weeks into months, and Alec's life, from the moment his alarm awakened him at 5 o'clock every morning until he closed his books at night, became as regular as a time clock. Always in the morning before school, he would feed, groom, and ride the black around the field. If the weather was nice, he would leave him outside, knowing Henry would be around to watch him. He didn't have time for games after school with the fellows anymore. He had too many things to do. He would rush home at 12:30 as soon as his last class was over, eat lunch, and then once again go to the stables where Henry was usually waiting for him. Henry had just received an answer from his friend in the jockey club, giving him the address of the stud book registry office in the Middle East. "Oh, it's very doubtful whether they can help you, though," he wrote, "as you have so little information to work on. However, I'm sure that they will do their best." Henry wrote to them. "Now all we can do is wait and hope," he told Alec. "It'll take a long time. That isn't going to stop us from training the black, though. I want to put a watch on that fella, even if we're never able to put him in the race." They hadn't attempted to put saddle or bridle on Black yet. Henry wanted to wait until spring. The weather became cold and the ground hard. "Our real work begins in the spring," Henry told Alec. "Now we'll just take it easy." Under Henry's expert tutelage, Alec's riding skills became greater and greater until Henry nodded with approval. "A grand combination," he said to himself as he watched the boy ride high on the stallion's withers as he galloped down the field. After the workouts, Alec would usually spend the rest of the afternoon doing the odd jobs around home which his father gave him. "Have to earn your allowance," his father said. He had found plenty of things for him to do, too. Alec never had known there was so much to be done around a house, and his father hadn't missed up on a thing. The front and back porch gleamed with new paint. The garage doors now opened easily and stayed open. The cellar shone with cleanliness, and Alec never knew so many leaves could fall from trees. One day he would rake up and burn hundreds of them. The next day the yard would be covered again. Then with the coming of cold weather, there was work to be done in the house. Luckily enough, even though it was now January, snow hadn't fallen and the walks didn't have to be shoveled. There was no news about the black's parentage. "I'm afraid it's no use, Henry," Alec told him. "Don't give up yet, son," Henry replied, but Alec could tell that he too had very little hope. One afternoon, Alec walked toward the barn. The sky was overcast and the air cold. "Have to take it easy with him today," he thought. He pulled open the barn door. Henry sat in his favorite chair and tipped perilously back on two legs against the wall. He was looking at the black, who was moving restlessly in his stall. Henry turned as the boy closed the door. "Hello, Alec," he said. "Hello, Henry. What's the matter with the black?" "Is he all right?" replied. "He's all right. Keep him in all morning, though. He's pretty fidgety. The ground's pretty hard, and I didn't want him out there by himself." He'll feel better after you've given him a few turns around the field. Do your best to hold him." The stallion snorted and reached his head out toward Alec. Alec went over and placed a hand on his horse. "Hello, fella," he said. "Want to get some air, don't you?" The stallion shook his head. "How's everything at school?" Henry asked. "Managing all right, Henry. Made up most of my work, and things seem to be working out better than ever before. Guess it must be the regular hours," and he laughed. "Yep," said Henry. "Keep it up, Alec, and we'll show your folks that you can raise a champion racehorse and get good marks at the same time." Alec looked out the window. "Henry," he exclaimed, "look, it's snowing." The front legs of Henry's chair came down with a bang. He went to the window beside Alec. "Sure enough it is," he said. They watched the snow fall, heavier and heavier. "Well, it's about time anyway. Never seen it hang off so long before," he said. "Yeah," said Alec glumly, "and I can just see myself shoveling tons of it off the walk." A regular blizzard started raging outside. "Sure is coming down," said Henry. The black was watching the snow too. His eyes were wide with wonder, his ears pitched forward. "Henry," said Alec, "look at the black. This is the first time he's seen snow." "That's right," exclaimed Henry. "They don't have any anywhere where he comes from. I wonder how he's going to react to it." "Shouldn't bother him any," answered Henry. The black pawed the bedding of his stall. "Seems pretty nervous," Alec said. "Yep, but that's because he hasn't been out," replied Henry thoughtfully. For the next half hour, Henry and Alec watched the falling snow. "Seems to be stopping
Okay,
now,"
pause.
said Alec.